And that leads us into the Detroit game, the Arizona Cardinal game. The fantasy impacts of this game. This might be an ugly one. I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of the uglier scoring games that we will see for week 3. Because it's going to be one of those, did Detroit do enough to really put enough pressure on the Cardinals offense to have to stay aggressive for 4 quarters? Or did the Cardinals do what they did to Washington last week? Get up on them early and just kind of toy with them, kind of run out the clock in the second half of this game. I think that's going to depend. Now, here's the good news for Detroit. Kenny Galladay is back. He's practicing in a limited capacity, but every indication is that Kenny Galladay is a full go for Sunday. So he's got to get back in your lineups. Now, temper your expectations. We have him at wide receiver 26, which means he's just outside of our wide receiver 2 territory. He's more of a high-end wide receiver 3. He's going to get closer to that low-end wide receiver 1 territory as we move throughout the season. The reason he comes in at wide receiver 26 is, one, it's the first game back from his hamstring issue. And even though we feel pretty confident that he's actually going to be pretty healthy in this game because Detroit actually did play it safe when it came to his situation, it's still a tough matchup. Patrick Peterson, Byron Murphy. No one seems to be talking about it because everyone's talking about Kyler Murray, but this is a team that has one of the better duos at the cornerback position, which is really giving a lot of teams fits. Now, we really haven't been able to see it on full display because they played the 49ers, who had none of their starting actual receivers in that game. And then they played Washington, who only has one legitimate starting receiver in that game, Terry McLaurin, who actually wound up still having a really good game. Mostly because I think Washington has no choice but to throw Terry McLaurin the ball 150 times a game, though, too. Detroit does. Now, Kenny Galladay coming back, he makes a lot of things fall back into place. Marvin Jones is a much better complement receiver than he is being the lead guy. I think these last 2 weeks had to show you that because he was a guy kept coming in as somebody who was a must-start for us, was a high-end wide receiver, too. He's going to get volume. He got the volume. Well, in getting the touchdown last week, he really didn't produce the results that you were hoping for, that you needed, that you were counting on. He is a much better complement wide receiver. Is he a must play in this game? No. Again, like I said, this is one of the top end duo corners in the league. But am I fine with him playing as a low end wide receiver 3, especially if you're a team who's nicked up by injury, which you very well could be heading into this matchup? Yeah, I'm okay with him there. I'm okay if he has to play in your flex. Because the thing about Marvin Jones is that he could have games and he can go for stretches where he just doesn't seem that involved, where he's getting 4 catches for 23 yards like he did last week. But he also has those games where he'll get 2 to 3 touchdowns in one matchup and just win you the whole thing on his own. Those games normally come with Kenny Galladay on the field when teams have to pay attention to him in the red zone. So because he has that ceiling, Marvin Jones is okay to play as a boom or bust option in the wide receiver 3 if you don't have a better option. But Kenny Galladay is the only must start for us because he's Kenny Galladay. He's one of the most, I think, underrated star receivers of the NFL, quite frankly. Does that mean he could play Matthew Stafford? I think you have better options. He just hasn't looked right. Now, with Galladay coming back, maybe that changes things. Maybe he's able to get going again. Maybe he starts to look like this Matthew Stafford from a season ago. But it's looked more than that to me when watching these games, when watching Stafford so far this year. He looks a little rusty still. It's not something that I think is going to stay with him all season. I don't think he's fallen off. So I don't think I have to worry about that. But for this matchup, I only have him at QB 25. There's a lot of quarterbacks that I like this week. Stafford's not necessarily one of them. Let me see a game with Kenny Galladay back in the lineup. Let me see how Stafford looks in that situation. Let me see Detroit on the road. I think you should have better options in this game than Matthew Stafford. And when it comes to Detroit running back, I really don't want to play one. I really don't. If you can help it, don't, please. Ugh, it's brutal. I mean, we thought after week 1, being that Adrian Peterson looked immensely superior to Kerryon Johnson, that was it for Kerryon. He was going to be the odd man out. We knew Deandre Swift would bounce back after week 1 and week 2. We knew he was going to keep that passing down role. He's their future. They're not going to give up on him after 1 week, after one bad drop. And he was back. He had 6 catches last week. He's going to continue in that role, and he'll build from there. He'll get more carries as the season wears on. But right now, he's the passing down guy. That's why if I have to play one, it's DeAndre Swift for me, especially when you're talking about half point and full point PPR, which is half points what we talk about when we talk about where we have these guys ranked on the show. Remember, you can go to bellyupfantasysports.com to check out our rankings for both standard and full point PPR leagues as well. But DeAndre Swift comes in at RB31 for us heading into this matchup. I don't want to play him. He doesn't necessarily have guaranteed touchdown production. So you're hoping for a performance kind of like you got last week. You're hoping for 5 catches for 50 or 60 yards. Because all of a sudden, Kerryon Johnson didn't go away in week 2. I mean, he's only had 7 carries, 32 yards. He wasn't impressive. Adrian Peterson, again, was the better running back. But they still let Kerryon Johnson almost split the snap share with Adrian Peterson, and they let him get the goal line carry. And he wound up with a touchdown. It's a 3-way committee. It's a mess. And it's a 3-way committee that's not even a great rushing attack. It's Detroit. It's a terrible defense. They're going to be more game scripts where they have to throw the ball and come back from behind than they are going to be leading the way. So if I can help it, I'm not going to play Detroit running back. If I have to play one, it would be DeAndre Swift because he does have a floor that comes with that receiving role. Now, you go to Cardinal side of the ball, and you have your big 3. You have Kyler Murray, you have Kenyan Drake, you have DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, you're playing all 3 of them. I think where I'm going to surprise some people is I have Kenyan Drake as my RB3 on the week. My number 3 running back overall on the week. I love the volume he's been getting. I know he hasn't had his big game yet to this point. It's coming. This Detroit matchup at home in Arizona is the perfect matchup for Kenyan Drake, who received 22 carries last week, to, in a bell cow role so far this season, to go off and have his big game. The Cardinals' offensive line, although banged up, shouldn't have too many problems against this Detroit front. I think Kenny Drake is going to gash them. I think he's in for a big week. RB3 on the week in this matchup, a guy who's getting tons of volume. And when you have a week where you don't have Christian McCaffrey, you don't have Saquon Barkley, you don't have Raheem Mostert, Kenyan Drake's a guy who's going to be an RB1 more times than not moving forward. And I have him as a big-time RB3 this week. So play Kenyan Drake with a ton of confidence. I have DeAndre Hopkins as the wide receiver 1. Again, probably, possibly, no Devontae Adams, possibly no Julio Jones, definitely no Michael Thomas. DeAndre Hopkins winds up being the last elite superstar wide receiver left in a great matchup. He's been getting targeted head and shoulders ahead of Larry Fitzgerald, ahead of Christian Kirk. Kyler Murray he's doing the Deshaun Watson thing. He's dropping back, and he's just, where's DeAndre Hopkins? And that's where I'm going with the football. Double-digit targets the first 2 weeks in a row. His floor is higher than pretty much all the other wide receivers' ceilings heading into this matchup. So, yeah, not that we needed to make a case for him, but DeAndre Hopkins is our number 1 wide receiver on the week. And Kyler Murray's a number 6 quarterback. This might be a game that he doesn't actually have to use his legs, though, because remember, the first 2 weeks has been against the 49ers, against Washington, 2 heavy pass rushing teams. He's actually had to run for his life a little bit because that offensive line is still suspect when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals. So we actually might see him get it done through the air this week and not as much rushing, but we always know that's going to be there and offer him the floor, and that's why we have him as the QB6 on the week as well. Not playing anybody outside of that. Not playing Larry Fitzgerald, not playing Christian Kirk, not playing Dan Arnold. Tight end still isn't really involved in this offense. You play your big 3, and you play him with a big smile on your face going up against the Detroit Lions. So we can move on to a game that we expect to be a back and forth, that we expect to be a shootout on the week. That game is the Dallas Cowboys and the Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott are our QB 1 and 2 overall on the week. So, yeah, we are expecting this to be a shootout. Russell Wilson, number 1, Prescott, number 2, just to be clear. We'll start on Dallas side of the ball. Ezekiel Elliott, RB1 of the week. Gotta love it against Seattle. This is not the same Seattle team. And if Bobby Wagner can't go, I don't think they have anybody who can really stop the run outside of Jamal Adams. You're going to be depending on your safety, your box safety, to be able to stop the run there. Zeke's going to have a big game, and he's been so involved in the passing game. So I think that's really been the great thing about Ezekiel Elliott through the first 2 weeks, is that his floor is much higher than I think it ever was. And it was always pretty high, of course, but he's really an integral part of this passing attack. And that's saying a lot when you have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and now possibly new upcoming superstar at the tight end position, Dalton Schultz. So, yeah. Cooper's our number 5 receiver on the week. Talked about this before. Talk about it again. I love the fact that Amari Cooper gets to pretty much line up wherever he wants to. I love the fact that they move him around. I love the fact that he gets to play in the slot. He's never going to be matched up on the other opposing teams' top corner. Never. With Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb being able to put them on the perimeter the way they are, all 3 of these guys, you could rotate all 3 of these guys in any of these positions. With Amari Cooper being the $20 million man, they have to make an emphasis to make him the number 1 wide receiver, and they've done that through the first 2 weeks. He's never going to be matched up on the other team's top corner. And this is Seattle secondary. Outside of Adams, it doesn't really scare you to begin with. So I expect a big game out of Amari Cooper. The question really becomes Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. Are you playing both of them? Which one are you playing over the other one? For us, it's CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb comes in as our wide receiver 25 this week. So just outside the wide receiver 2 territory, but a top end wide receiver 3, a top end flex play. He's been consistent through the first 2 weeks. He's been more involved than Michael Gallup as far as the target share go. Michael Gallup might wind up being the odd man out, not because he's not good, not because his offense isn't going to have high volume where all 3 of these guys are going to be able to eat in matchups, because they will. But he might wind up being the odd man out because it seems like Michael Gallup is the guy who's getting relegated to being matched up against the opposing team's top corner, unlike Cooper, unlike CeeDee Lamb. So Michael Gallup's kind of getting thrown to the wolves a little bit. That's why he's not a must-start for us in this game. He's wide receiver 39. Now, he definitely has flex potential, and I like what his ceiling could be in this matchup. So he's definitely somebody that I would contemplate, depending on what my options are, possibly being in my lineup. Because, again, like I said, I think this is going to be a shootout, so there's going to be enough for everybody to eat. But if Dalton Schultz is also going to get involved, and CeeDee Lamb and Cooper are getting the better matchups against the corners, that's kind of why Michael Gallup's gotten left out the first 2 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again this week against Seattle. So that's why he's the 1 wide receiver. He's the 1 pass catcher on Dallas. It's just not a must start for me. But he still has a good ceiling going into this game because he is immensely talented. And the targets very easily could go his way, maybe not CeeDee Lamb's for this upcoming week. It's fluid in that sense. I wouldn't be afraid to play Gallup, depending on what my options are. So I just want to make that very, very clear. But if you're asking me who am I going with, I'm going with CeeDee Lamb. He looked very good. He looked very dynamic. He looks every bit of the superstar that we thought he was going to be coming out of college. And because he's already asserted himself as one of the top guys in this offenses and commanding targets, feel pretty safe about him moving forward. And I'm playing him in my lineup this week. Dalton Schultz. So this is another instance where the ranking doesn't necessarily reflect the fantasy value. And what I mean by that is Dalton Schultz comes in as our tight end 20. That sounds like normal circumstances. That's a tight end we're telling you not to play. It's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that there's a lot of really good tight ends this year. It is a strength position where in years past, it was, you get top 2, top 3 guys, and outside of that, it was a crapshoot. That's not the case this year. There's a lot of good tight ends and a lot of good situations where they have the opportunity to be able to perform and command a certain amount of targets, command red zone capability.